make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there.
Do you think we cracked the case on why young guys in particular are missing more time in the NBA? All right, thanks for tuning back to the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Mubarak, joined by
Jack Slaymaker.
So this is our first episode since the summer where we're not going to be primarily talking about football, so definitely going to be a change. Let's start off with the NBA season. We just got finished with our All-Star weekend. I would say it's been better than the last few All-Star breaks. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty decent. I mean, there still is like no substance to it and like sort of hard to watch at times. I don't know what they can really do to make it more entertaining. Like they had probably the best dunk contest they've had since Levine Gordon Part 2. It still was like a C-tier All-Star weekend as a whole. I mean, the game is still a joke. Obviously, it's been a joke for a while, and like there's no really getting that back, you know. I just don't think with all the money on the line and what teams put into the season as a whole, no one's going to risk any type of injury in a game like that. So I don't really think there's getting that back, but at the same time, I think they need to find something to make this more watchable, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it was bad this weekend necessarily, but it wasn't good. And honestly, at times it wasn't really watchable either.
Yeah, there is like a lot of players that didn't get to play in the All-Star break. And I get like Giannis had like an actual like wrist injury and he played a couple minutes, but that was it. It was 2 minutes for the whole All-Star game. But there was also guys like Zion who were like resting to like prepare themselves for like the next stretch of the season, which is understandable, but you want to see him play in the All-Star game. And even moving into the dunk contest, like Mac McClung put up a show, but I don't really think it's great for the league having guys who've played 2 career games in the whole NBA be a part of the dunk contest because they're like not even NBA players. You're just like kind of throwing Harlem Globetrotters in there. Like we want to see Zion in the dunk contest. We want to see Ja Morant, Jalen Green back in it. Like we want to see like the real like talents of the league who can bounce like be in the dunk contest. And we haven't seen that since Levine Gordon, and I don't think we will see that for a while.
Yeah, I agree. And what you were saying too about the bigger names that are truly bouncy in the getting them in the dunk contest. Like I thought Trey Murphy was like he had a lot of jump in him, but at the same time, like he's not a big name and he's not the type of dunker that Zion and Ja Morant are, where like they can get really fancy with it. But I think Trey Murphy was pretty basic.
Yeah, I kind of like the fact that McClung was in the dunk contest. I sort of like this idea of bringing guys that we don't necessarily think of as massive stars. But when you look at what McClung has done, he's won dunk contests throughout his entire life, going back to when he was in high school. So it's not like that this is just like a nobody that they brought up. Like they know that this guy can put on a show. And that's sort of the whole point of the All-Star break is for guys to display talents outside of the actual game, which is dedicated to the best players in the league. And if I'm being honest, I don't watch All-Star games in any sport. I just don't find them that entertaining. They've definitely gone down a lot in specific sports. Football and basketball have gone down a lot. There's a lot less defense in both. The NFL one now is just a complete joke. Hockey's done interesting things with having 3-on-3, like shorter games, but that still doesn't interest me enough. The one that I'll watch the most is the Home Run Derby. I just find that the most entertaining thing. I know certain guys are stepping out of it, but still most guys that go in the Derby, regardless of the fact that they're the best home run hitters, still punch shows. And I feel like that's what the dunk contest could turn into if they keep bringing in these guys that may be G League players or NBA players with low minutes, but can put on a show, because that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that, but it's just doesn't feel right when it's not the star players doing it, because it used to be like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant did like dunk contests, and LeBron hasn't for whatever reason. I think he started that trend of like the really big name players not choosing not to be in the contest. And I mean, say what you want, like they just want to be healthy for like the games that matter, but I don't know. I just think like Mac McClung's a great dunker and everything, but you'd rather see Zion, Ja, LeBron, the real guys who may be slightly less of a better dunker, but like you want to see the big names.
Yeah, agreed. And like, I also think Mac McClung is like the only guy of that tier that we're talking about that can really do what he did. Like Aiden was saying, he's been in dunk contests his whole life. Like he became popular in high school pretty much based off his dunks. I think that Mac McClung is like the only guy that can really, really put on a show like he did. Like Mac McClung would have probably won that dunk contest against a lot of big name guys like we're talking about, but I agree with you. Like it's something different when it's the guys that a lot of people have fandom in or the opposite hatred for. I think you're going to draw a lot more attention, and I think that's sort of what it's about. But honestly, I don't even think the dunk contest is the best event of the weekend. And I think they should kind of start focusing more on the 3-point contest anyway. Like, I just think that's more entertaining in itself. It's just, how many more dunks can we see before it starts getting a little old, you know? Like, the 3-point contest is better in my opinion because it's more of a race than like a show-off competition. And I sort of think that's more intriguing. Like, it's sort of like the home run derby for the MLB, where it's more the competition rather than them just showing off their fancy dunks and stuff. Like, you get into it a little bit because you might be rooting for a guy, or the race is really close for between 2 or 3 dudes. And like it was this weekend. The 3-point contest was really entertaining outside of the 2 or 3 guys that did terrible in it. But, you know, like Tatum was really good, and then Hield and Halliburton were really good, and Lillard is Lillard. And that was a really good pairing for that 3-point contest. I liked it a lot better.
Yeah, I don't know how Julius Randle got in.
I don't know either. I don't know who made that decision. Like,
yeah.
He's just not really a good 3-point shooter, and there are so many better shooters you could have put in. But I liked putting Kevin Huerter in. He just pretty much choked it. So there's nothing you can really do there, but I think that was a good choice, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know Steph is injured and he wasn't able to play in it, but it doesn't feel right seeing him and Clay and guys like that not in it. Like,
yeah, agreed.
Because I don't think if Steph was even healthy, he would have been in it this year, and that's like part of the problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a recurring theme that big name guys don't want to like actually partake in these events.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely different from the dunk contest because, I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible because we've seen like way weirder injuries, but like I don't see a guy getting injured in the 3-point contest.
Yeah, right. There's pretty much no risk for injury in it. And like, although we haven't seen anyone get injured in a dunk contest, at least in the NBA, yeah, I agree with you that the risk and potential for injury is still there, and it's like pretty high. But yeah, like the 3-point contest doesn't risk injury, and like you could expand it too, you know, like you could sort of make it a bracket style with a bunch of guys in, and like I know it'd be a little bit longer, but at the same time, like people want to watch it, you know. I feel like more people want to watch the 3-point contest than the dunk contest nowadays because just kind of how stale the dunk contest got. And like, I'm not sure if there's going to be a Vince Carter to save it this time. Like, Vince Carter saved the dunk contest last time because he was a freak and put on dunks that no one had seen. And then people were like, oh, I'm going to, you know, kind of build off that, made their own ideas. But now it feels like we've run out of ideas.
I think Mac kind of did that on a smaller like wave, but I don't think it's going to like have the same effect.
I feel like he squeezed the last bit of toothpaste out of the bottle. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the last dunk he did was like, I think that was the first dunk I've seen in a long time that I hadn't seen before in a dunk contest. Like, even Levine and, I mean, Gordon doing the like sitting thing with the mascot, that was probably the last time I'd say that. Yeah. But even their other dunks in those 2 contests had been done before. Like, Levine did a free throw line dunk, granted with the windmill, but it was like we had seen that. And same with Gordon, like, it was sort of just them getting so high up in the air. It was kind of mesmerizing, which is what made that great. And I'm not really sure if anyone can do that.
Yeah, I think the difference between the Gordon and Levine one was just the fact they were so close the entire time. And that was what made that competition amazing. Granted, some of the dunks had never been done before. But on the whole, we just don't ever see 2 guys that are that good at dunking be that competitive throughout the whole thing. I think the moment where the dunk contest sort of jumped the shark a little bit was when Blake Griffin jumped over the car in 2010, I believe it was. I think that was the moment where the dunk contest became something else other than guys just showing off their athletic ability. It was, okay, what's the most outrageous dunk I can do now? And you can't really do anything bigger than jumping over a car.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. And this comes to fruition too, like when Jericho Sims was doing the elbow in the rim stuff, like, yeah, it's impressive, but bro, like that has been done, and you're just not doing what people really want to see. And yeah, I mean, what's more impressive than jumping over a car at this point? And could you think of a dunk that could be more impressive than what McClung did this weekend? I'm not really sure at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And going back to your comparison to what the three-point contest could be to the home run derby, it could be that. What I love so much about the home run derby, I never see people hit 500-foot home runs consecutive times when they're batting in the regular season. You could do that in the home run derby because you're literally getting tossed batting practice. And I guess if you showed up for batting practice, you can see it. But it's not the same as watching a guy hit multiple three-pointers. Granted, the contest is exciting and impressive, and it does bring that competitive edge between multiple players. But I just feel like I see so many three-pointers in actual games. It doesn't excite me enough as a casual basketball fan to tune in. Now, for me, I would say I'm way more than just a casual baseball fan. I love baseball. It's one of my favorite sports. But the reason I tune into the home run derby over any other contest in any other sport for All-Star breaks is because you see things that you don't see on a regular basis. And that's what I love about that aspect of the competition.
Yeah, so moving on to All-Star break, this is recorded on the 21st of February, so we just got news today that Lonzo Ball is going to get shut down for the second consecutive year due to a left meniscus tear in his knee. He had surgery on this knee 3 times. He got it once when he was in LA and twice back-to-back times in an attempt to fix it in Chicago. I'm at the point where I'm just concerned if he's ever going to be able to play basketball again. Because, like, this is not like John Wall where he got 2 separate injuries and, like, people were still doubting if he would come back at all. But, like, this is the same injury and he, like, can't even run consistently on his knee. So you start to question if a third surgery will do anything to, like, help him get back on the court. And it's really sad to see because when he was playing for the Bulls, they were the 1 seed, and that sounds insane, but, like, that was a really good team with 2 definite all-stars in Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic in the paint, and then Lonzo Ball shooting 42% from 3, playing great defense and passing the ball. Like, that was a great team, and now without him, they're like 11 games out of 500 right now.
Yeah, it's sort of weird how he's the glue, it seems like, for the team. But when you look into it more, I feel like it makes a little bit more sense. Like what you were talking about, he shot 42% from 3. Like he takes a load off of the top 2 scorers there, and he does it consistently. And he's able to distribute and really make a difference in the passing aspect for the Bulls offense, which Caruso, I feel like, lacks. I love Caruso, but I actually think Lonzo is probably a better defender than him too, especially when it comes to having better length and better athleticism. Lonzo definitely beats him in those categories. So, yeah, I mean, Caruso coming off the bench is one thing, but him being the starter is a drop-off from from Lonzo. And that feels like kind of what's going wrong with Chicago right now is a lack of depth outside of DeRozan, LaVine, and Vucevic.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I was watching a DKM video on YouTube, and he was talking about how, like, I mean, we all know LeVar was, like, a great dad and everything, but, like, they literally played every second of every game from, like, middle school up until the NBA, and then played on their hard concrete driveway all day after the games and practices. It's kind of like they were overworked to this point, and their bodies are, like, breaking down, like, faster than, like, guys that didn't train as hard as they did.
Yeah.
And you see it, like, LiAngelo Ball, I know he doesn't really count because he never played an actual game in the NBA, but he was super injury prone the time he played overseas, D-Leagues, and LaMelo Ball's the same thing. He played, like, half the games this year, I think, and his wrist has been bothering him since, like, high school, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. I mean, granted, he's not in the same situation as Lonzo, but you do see that injuries linger with everyone in that family that's been trained the same way.
Yeah, this has been my issue with youth sports for so long is that in pretty much every sport around the country, kids just aren't getting an off week. I mean, I used to coach rugby, which used to just be a sport that you played in the spring, you had off in the summer, and then you had just small little tournaments in the fall. Now you have an entire spring season, summer and fall, and now you can also play winter in certain areas as well. Sports overall in America have become year-round, and guys aren't getting rest. I've seen NBA players in the past couple of years say that they were overworked at the AAU level and very competitive high school teams, and then college. And then once you get to the pros, your body's breaking down at 25. LaMelo and Lonzo and Lonzo were all even more overworked than those guys. So I can't even imagine what their bodies are like.
Yeah, and I'm sure
guys that just played AAU and high school and didn't even work out as much afterwards. I mean, everyone still has practices and all that, which breaks down your body. But they were playing basketball almost 24/7. And at a certain point, your body just will not be able to keep up with the wear and tear, especially when you get to the NBA, which is the hardest level that you can get to.
Yeah, and I'm sure like soccer has this issue too. I feel like basketball and soccer are probably the two sports with this issue at a forefront for them, because those are the two easiest sports to really play year round anywhere you are. Obviously, you can play basketball anytime you want during the summer and the spring and the fall even, barring weather, of course. But, you know, when it's sunny out, you're able to go outside and play basketball anytime you want. And obviously, the games are played indoors, so the winter is not affected basketball at all. And I feel like soccer is going into that too, because soccer is played pretty much all year round. And now with the increasing of indoor facilities that are used for multiple sports, soccer can be played year round too. And those are sports where you are just running constantly changing direction and stuff. So I'm not surprised that those are the two sports really with the most like non-contact knee injuries, you know, with your knee ligaments and stuff. Yeah, a guy like Lonzo, he probably got overworked. Let's be honest. I mean, and it's not really a detriment to him. I think that they all just loved basketball so much and wanted to play it all the time. Like, I don't think LeVar was necessarily like slaving his kids over the sport or anything.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah, but
no, I mean, his kids, all these guys could have said, I need a little bit of a break.
Yeah, right.
And as hard on them as LeVar seemed to be, I think he would have understood that. I really do.
No question.
He always had what was best in mind for his kids. It wouldn't have shocked me if there's been stories that we haven't heard about LeVar pulling them out of games because they got hurt, even if the coach didn't want that to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the type of parent that he is. So it is just the fact that these guys all love the game so much, and they were thinking more just making it to the league. And that's where I think the biggest disconnect is that you can be in middle school and have someone say, all right, this is what you got to do to get to the best AAU level and best high school team. But when you get to high school, then you also have these college coaches around. Once you get to college, you don't necessarily know if you're going to make the NBA. So you don't always have someone on you telling you what the next level is going to be like. And even at that point, the biggest factor to you wanting to make the league is money. It's not necessarily what you have to do to keep yourself healthy enough to play 5-10 years in the NBA or any other sport as well. And I think that's what the biggest issue has to be, is there has to be people at the NBA level saying, if you want to stay in shape, you cannot work out and play competitively for an entire year. You need rest in order to be as healthy as possible. And we're just not hearing that from anyone at these younger levels, and it needs to be talked about.
Do you think we cracked the case on why young guys in particular are missing more time in the NBA? Because the AAU is not what it was like during the 90s and the 80s, where they just played year round, and it's been talked about. Like Stan Van Gundy mentioned it. Like on NBA teams, there used to be like one medical doctor and like one training staff guy, and they missed like exponentially less games. And now they got whole teams for like medical training, diet advisors, all this, and the guys are missing like at least half the more games than the guys in past eras were.
Yeah, I can see how that's counterintuitive, because it seems like the more people that you would have on these staffs and things, that the less games people would miss. But it's the opposite. So yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I feel like everyone is overworking themselves, you know. I feel like guys don't realize that it's okay to just take 2 or 3 days a week with a light workout where you're just pretty much working on shooting or that kind of thing. You don't necessarily have to go super hard in the weight room or on the court either. You can kind of have those days for the rest of the week. You can split them up evenly so that your body does get the maximum amount of health. Like, I'm not saying you have to have 1 or 2 days a week where you don't do anything. Like, you can do light workouts and stuff. That's a possibility. And I feel like people overwork themselves because they're all competing with each other and they're ultra competitive guys, you know. Mm-hmm. Because even, you know, 70s and even early 80s, like weight training wasn't really a thing even. It wasn't really popular. Like coaches instructed guys to not lift weights because they thought it would hurt them and stuff. But then science came and we realized like, oh, if you do it properly, if you do the correct workouts, if you diet correctly, it's extremely beneficial to weight train. And that's why people started getting into weight training. And now I feel like science is taking another like leaps and bounds forwards too. For whatever reason, guys are still missing more games with more injuries. Like, I feel like what if doctors are pointing out smaller things that weren't necessarily thought about back in other eras, and that's why guys were sort of just playing through a lot of stuff. And then nowadays, like, doctors find a little thing and you're paying this guy so much money, you have to like shut him down for a week or two. I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, I feel like when we see rest, I feel like it might be a doctor being like, hey, there's some inflammation here. Like, it's not serious, but he needs a day or two to just let it go down before playing again. Like, I'm not sure.
Jack, you sort of mentioned that maybe we cracked the case by talking about younger players. I don't think we necessarily cracked it. I think that it's been a problem. There's certain players that have addressed it. The issue is, and Sly, you mentioned the money at the NBA. There's so much money at every single level of basketball, starting from the age of almost 13 to the NBA. These sneaker executives, the sponsorships for the McDonald's tournament, and all of that, they need the best players to be playing all the time at even the youngest levels. So when you get to the NBA, these problems start to arise, and doctors are going to be cautious about it because they're starting to realize, oh, shoot, you haven't had a rest week or month since you were 13, and now you're trying to get to the NBA and working out even harder because the only way that you get to that level is being the most competitive person in the gym, in the weight room, and that's all the way up until you get to that highest level. You have to have that dog in you to be competitive. The issue is that there's that disconnect of I need to do whatever I can to get to the league, and I need to make sure my body's okay so I can have a sustainable career in the league. Those two things don't intertwine. I don't know if there's necessarily a quick fix or even a long-term solution to this, because if you're a kid, and most basketball players come from low-income houses, that's hard. It's going to be hard to tell a kid, hey, you need to take a break for a little bit in order to make sure that your career lasts as long as possible when the kid is just thinking about getting to league so he can provide to his family. That is a tough sell to make to someone, especially for someone who's only 13, because we all know that the brain is developed till you're 25. Imagine being a 50-year-old making that decision already. It's very complex, and I don't think anyone necessarily wants to solve it because they just see their pockets getting fuller. That's sort of, it's morbid, but I think that's just the truth of the entire matter.
So yeah, the NBA season doesn't start back up until Thursday, but we could take a look at the standings and see where teams are. I saw that the Lakers, they needed to win 16 of their last 24 in order to like clinch a play-in spot. I don't know exactly if that's like the 10th spot or something, but
yeah, and I'm not sure how the math, like, I'm not sure if that math is entirely correct because that would also have to probably include another team losing a certain amount, you know, because they're so far behind, I feel like. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they're not so far behind because games-wise, they're not that far out, but teams-wise, they have a couple teams ahead of them.
Yeah, that definitely had to have been an estimate because they're only 2 games out. But
right.
There's still 2 teams ahead of them, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Trailblazers and Jazz are a game and a half ahead of them. But they're only a half game behind the Thunder, so. And
I don't like chasing Damian Lillard, honestly. Like, I feel like no matter what, a team with him on the court is bound to win some games, and I don't really trust that.
Yeah, I could see Minnesota falling out of the play-in, though.
I could see that, yeah, definitely.
And same with Golden State or New Orleans, depending on if their stars come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Golden State definitely needs Curry back right now. I'm not even sure if he'll come back, honestly, like how healthy he'll necessarily be in and where they'll be in a playoff position. All these teams, I feel like, are prone to slip a little bit. Even the Pelicans, I throw in that mix. Like, I feel like the top 6 are definitely safe, but even Pelicans at 7, you never know. You know, Zion, he's out for the year, right?
No, he was sitting out at All-Star weekend because he was planning on like coming back in a week or two.
Okay, all right.
But he's probably going to miss more time.
Right, okay. I saw that he was missing more time than they expected. And they've slipped far. Like, I feel like we were talking about them in December and they were a top 3 seed, and now they've slipped all the way to 7.
Yeah, they were at the 1 seed like 2 months ago.
Yeah, and 11 games back of the 1. Like, that's a far drop. I could see it slipping more. I mean, we'll see. Thunder, I kind of like them because they're young, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been playing so well. It seems like they have a lot of great chemistry, and it doesn't seem like they are playing with any tightness or anything like that. It seems like they're playing very loose, which I like, going into a stretch run. And it seems like a team you mentioned, the Timberwolves, seem very uptight right now, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I'll just call it that. Like, I'm not really sure, but I feel like we're going to find out this offseason more about the situation there, because it's super odd that you are paying 2 guys. It was close to $500 million or something, right?
Yeah.
Cat and Gobert, and you are getting no production anywhere. And you have a guy like Anthony Edwards, who was a borderline all-star this year. Mm-hmm. So it's not really adding up that you're not clicking together. Like, something is way off there.
It's something that's not getting talked about either.
Yeah.
D'Angelo Russell and Cat are like best friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for him like to be that checked out of that organization when he's like that tight with like their franchise piece. I mean, I don't think he's the franchise piece anymore. I think it's Anthony Edwards, but
yeah,
he's getting paid like the franchise piece.
Mm-hmm.
For him to like completely check out, unfollow the team on all social media and just look forward to going wherever but there just says a lot, because on paper they do have a lot of potential as like that 4. Yeah. Like, just taking money aside, taking egos aside, like that's a really good team. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's just like very incompetent management, like one of the worst managed teams in the league.
Completely agreed. Completely.
I just don't see what the next step for them is, because if I'm Anthony Edwards, I don't want to stay there.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And if I'm Cat, I honestly would kind of be looking for a way out too. And I think that the Timberwolves might even lean that way also, because I don't think Cat is untradeable necessarily. I think Gobert is untradeable.
Oh yeah, Gobert is untradeable.
You are stuck with that. But Cat, although he's getting paid a lot, like, Cat's a great player and he still has a lot in the tank. So I think he's a very tradable piece. I'm not sure if they'll want to dump Edwards, but if Edwards is, we see now how much power the players have, and like, if he wants to get out, I feel like he'll get out.
I think it'll be like a DeAndre Ayton situation.
Right.
Like, he's just going to have to end up staying there because like they're just going to match whatever, especially if they get rid of Cat.
Yeah, exactly.
But we could talk about the buyouts and where they signed. Kevin Love went to the Miami Heat. Patrick Beverley went to the Chicago Bulls, and Russ went to the other LA team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Did I miss anyone?
Not anyone really important. Like, RJ Hampton went to the Pistons today. The Sixers got Dwayne Dedman. Like,
oh yeah, Terrence Ross is on the Suns.
Suns. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought he went to Milwaukee for a second. That's a good pickup for them. I love Terrence Ross, and like, especially for a team that wants to contend. A guy like Terrence Ross is really good. Veteran leadership. He'll give you something on the defensive end, not necessarily great or anything, but it's not below average at all. Mm-hmm. And he shoots the 3 really well, which is what you need from your role players in the playoffs.
I really don't know who's going to come out of the West this year, though, because
I know
we're talking about like Russ joining that team. I really think it's going to be like a Brooklyn Nets situation where they play like 13 games together, like that projected starting 5. Mm-hmm. And honestly, same with the Suns. Kevin Durant can't stay on the court.
It's untrustable. I agree.
Chris Paul's not Chris Paul anymore. DeAndre Ayton's a borderline top 5 center, and that's like making up for the other guys not being available or not playing well. And then, I mean, Devin Booker's Devin Booker, but he can't do it all.
Yeah, and I feel like Devin Booker isn't a guy where you're like, he's going to take over the game necessarily. No. I think he kind of lost that label. I feel like he had it for a minute or two, but I don't think it's there anymore.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating. Like, if you're going to put all these big names on a team, like, at least fucking play together.
Yeah, I know. And it's annoying because of how the media, like, shoves it down your throat, too, and then you don't really see anything out of them.
Yeah. The fact that Brooklyn Nets team played 16 games together between the three is, like, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's abysmal, too. And a lot of it, obviously, was because Kyrie was doing the vaccine thing, like that whole situation and everything. It also was because I feel like they were not really checked in. You know, you talked about D'Lo being checked out. I don't even think that all three of them really checked into the Brooklyn Nets in the first place. And I'm not sure. I don't know what it was. Like, do you think it's just personalities like that didn't mix? Because they're friends, but you can be friends and then also be a bad mixture in a workplace.
I think they picked the wrong city to do this in because, like, if Steve Nash wasn't the coach, I don't even think that would have been enough because, like, none of them liked Joe Tsai or, like, anyone in that management. I definitely think it was, like, an organizational feel.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to say where it would have worked, but, like, almost anywhere else it could have worked if they had pieces around them.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue with the Nets is that they're not an organization that's really ever won anything outside the one time they made it to the finals in, like, 99. And now you sort of, like, went from being a team that had a couple of solid role players and had a decent playoff run where even though they lost to the Sixers, at least it was something for them, to then be like, okay, we're bringing the biggest stars right now and we're winning immediately. And they weren't prepared to do that. When you look at what some of the best teams have done recently in the NBA, they have built up their stars. They've built up a process. Toronto took forever to win their one championship. But when they brought Kawhi in, they were already set up to say, hey, we're going to make a run because we've had our shot for 5 years. We've been shut out by LeBron, but we're ready for this. Even the Cavs, when they went from being like an upstart to them bringing players, like they had Kyrie on that team for 3 years. They had already had a decent setup with other role players. So bringing in LeBron and Kevin Love wasn't a huge throw-off. To bring in two automatic stars and then totally redo your entire team around them, you can't do that if you don't already have a culture set up that's ready to win. And I don't feel like the Nets ever were ready for that. And so when this thing fell apart, there was no backup plan. There was no exit strategy. There was no way to talk to Kyrie and KD, and then when they got James Harden about, okay, this is what we want to do, because I feel like management didn't really view them as a long-term building block. It was more, let's win right now. And when you don't win immediately, things start to fall apart. And that's exactly what happened with the Nets.
Yeah, and that was a really good point you made with the Raptors. Like, they had built a championship, roster, but it needed that one guy to push them over. And that's why bringing in Kawhi worked for them. It fits the saying, all that glitters is not gold, because, yeah, Harden, Kyrie, and KD on a team together seems amazing, but you're right. Like, they did not have what the Toronto Raptors had. Like, KD, Kyrie, and Harden did not come into an organization like the Toronto Raptors had. They came into a dysfunctional organization with a roster that was sort of just a fall off of the three, and it wasn't ready for a championship. Then you had the mixture with two of your guys, KD and Harden, struggled to stay on the court health-wise, and you had Kyrie who was fighting a personal battle with the vaccine, which I feel like his ego got in the way of that a little bit. That's what led to a disaster. Not that I see it happening in Phoenix, but I could at the same time, because CP3 is a guy who has, in the past, had teammates say they didn't like him and stuff. Devin Booker seems like a compatible personality. DeAndre Ayton already has issues with the organization, and his best friend from the team got traded away. And now you bring in Kevin Durant, who is probably the biggest hard ass in the NBA. Talent-wise, it makes sense. On paper, it looks great. This has the feeling of going down the Brooklyn Nets road where it's glittering, but it's not gold. And I kind of see that happening with Phoenix.
Yeah, I trust the Clippers actually making a run because they have, like, Jerry West, a guy who's, like, has a culture of winning, as opposed to, I know, like, I don't know who runs the Suns right now. I know they kicked the guy out.
Yeah, it's that It's Matt Isha or Matt Isba or something like that.
Yeah, they're having a lot of internal issues right
Yeah.
now, so that points to the Nets for me. I honestly am leaning back towards either the Clippers or the Nuggets going to the finals again.
I can kind of see that. And although I wasn't really, I've been hesitant to buy in on Denver all year. I'll put it that way. But I don't think Denver necessarily moved my needle. I just think the rest of the West moved my needle in Denver's favor because, like, I agree with you. Like, there just seems like so much dysfunction with the teams below. And, like, can I trust Memphis over Denver? I don't think so. And as much as I like Sacramento and as much as I love their future, this year doesn't feel it for me. I don't think I can trust them over Denver. I think if I had to pick three teams, I think the three teams I trust the most are Denver, Clippers, and the Mavericks at the moment, pending what we get from Curry coming back, because I don't care what seed they are. If Curry is there at the highest level, I trust them. But as for now, he's not healthy, and his wrist, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, it was his knee.
Knee? Okay. Yeah, same. Like, I was going to say wrist is not really an injury that wrist is an injury that I'm really worried about for him. And knee, same thing. Like, he's a guy that relies on cutting and a lot of that, like, non-contact knee movement that we were talking about before. So a knee injury kind of worries me for him. But we'll see. I mean, he still has a chance to get back, and then he'll prove himself on the court. We'll see. But yeah, those three I feel like are the most that I trust. And, like, it's so hard to pick one out. I think if I had to right now, Denver feels like a cop-out. And I think I'm going to go Dallas Mavericks. I think we'll make the finals at this point.
Yeah, they look really good, honestly, just looking at the rest of the West.
And I think they have the best player in the West. I think that means the most. Luka, I feel like, is the best player in the West.
I kind of like the Grizzlies a little bit. I don't really know why. I don't really have a good reason to, other than the fact that I don't trust the Nuggets at all. They've been known to go really high up and just collapse the playoffs. I think it goes back to last year. I think that experience that the Grizzlies got losing in the Western Conference Finals will give them that extra motivation. I don't think it's happened yet. I think that they're sort of just struggling through a very weak West. But come playoff time, I could see them getting fired up, saying, we got knocked out last year by the team that went on to win the finals. Why not us with how weak the West is? And sure, it's gotten better with Kyrie and KD going to the Mavericks and Suns and the Clippers getting a couple more role players and the Nuggets being the one seed and Jokic just having another great year. But I think if you're the Grizzlies, you feel like that you have a shot, a legitimate shot. And I'm excited to see what they can do in the playoffs.
Yeah, Grizzlies, I'll say this about them. Like, I love the dog in that team, and Dak can carry them far. Like, I feel like they're a very close-knit group, and they fight really hard. They're very scrappy. But the thing that worries me is that they get in their own way a lot of the times. And I'm not sure if I trust them at this point right now to not get in their own way. But at their best, they're probably the best team in the West right now.
Yeah, I think they're the most complete one. And obviously the Nuggets have the best record and have Jokic, which will make them a solid contender. But when I look at all these teams in the West, they all struggle against the top three teams in the East.
Right.
And the fact that you're struggling against the Sixers team, which granted the Sixers have looked much better this year than in past years, but most people are still not totally sold on the Sixers. The fact they're still beating up the best teams in the West, I think shows how weak the West really is at this point.
Yeah, that is saying something too, because I completely lost all faith in the Sixers when we went all healthy lineup against them when they were missing 4 of their starters and we still lost. So
Boston? Yeah.
The Sixers suck. I'm just going to say it. They're not good. They're not going to win anything this year. Maybe we need to see who they get rid of because it's a cultural thing. I will say it again. It's a cultural thing. It's not a player thing. If you're losing to a pretender in the opposite conference and you're the top 3 seeds in the West, then you're not going to get anywhere in your own conference.
Mm-hmm.
No. That's what is so frustrating about the West is that it is so wide open. And granted, it sort of has been since the Warriors fell off, although last year, once they got healthy for the first time in a while, they made that run. But I was excited to see what the West could put together once the Warriors dynasty sort of started to fall off a little bit. And from what I've seen, they've done almost nothing. I think Memphis will be something. Slay, you mentioned that they're young, they're hungry, they get in their own way. That happens with younger teams. If they can keep their core together, I think that they could be probably not the next Warriors, but they could put together a couple of finals appearances in the next few years. But outside of them, I just don't have any faith in any of these other organizations. I don't feel like these organizations have put themselves in a position to have long-term success. I think when Phoenix made it to the finals last year, 2 years ago, they weren't in it for the long term. Having Chris Paul as one of your best players is not a long-term success option at this point in his career. You knew that you were going to have to make it back the next year, or else things would start to fall apart, and that's what sort of has happened. And unfortunately, once the Warriors got healthy, they proved that they are still the top team in the West, even with how beat up they've been since they had that dynasty run.
Yeah, it's impressive, really, how they've been able to withstand some of the bad years they had. Like when Curry had that wrist injury that held him out for the year, they missed on the pick. Wiseman is gone now, so they missed on that pick. But yeah, they were still the champions last year, regardless of that. And Curry's longevity is impressive to me. I was thinking about this too. This is sort of off topic, but with LeBron breaking the record recently, I kind of thought about it. Do you think if Curry played another, let's say 7 to 10 years, do you think he could come close to it? Because the thing that moves me is how many threes he shoots. And I know in the in the term of a game, the three isn't necessarily always worth more than the two, but when we're talking about the scoring record and how many threes he does shoot, that could mean a lot to something like that. I'm just wondering if a guy like Curry can do it, because he doesn't have the physical dominance of a guy like LeBron and Kareem. Those are the top two, and the things that separated them were Kareem was taller than everyone he played against, really. And LeBron is stronger, faster, and just dominant over everyone. But the thing with Curry is he can shoot threes like no other, and he can always get to the rim too. And it's just the longevity at this point, and he seemed a little injury prone, but at the same time, if he could play another 7 healthy years or so, I think he could come close to it. And granted, at that point, we'd be talking he's in the 20s of his career.
21,183.
How many seasons has he played? Can you look that up too? I'm pretty sure it's at he was drafted 09 or 08. So it's up at 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'd be talking about him getting close to 20. But I think if LeBron can be as dominant as he is now at 38, why can't Curry? I mean, Curry's game isn't like LeBron's, but at the same time, his shot is so good and so consistent that I don't really see a guy like him aging out necessarily.
Look this up. Do you guys know how many career points Curry has? Because it's really not as many as you probably think.
Yeah, I just said it was 21,183.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize that was the number you're mentioning. Yeah, so at this point, from this one article that I'm reading, he would have to average, with his career average of 24.5 points per game, he would have to do that for 9 more seasons to surpass 38,000. And that's saying that LeBron doesn't play another 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's impossible because he has some games, in 2019 he played 5 games.
Yeah.
And 2017 played 51 games. He's not as injury prone as Kevin Durant, but he's not as healthy as LeBron James, and it comes down to health. So I just don't ever see it happening, because I think LeBron's going to finish with at least 43,000 points.
Yeah, probably something like that. He'll get close to 45, definitely. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I think Luka is probably the best guy in the league right now to come close to LeBron's record, because he's young. He's been fairly healthy. He hasn't missed a lot of time in his career yet. He shoots the three really well, and he scores from all 3 levels. It's all about, like you said, it's about longevity and whether you can stay on the court or not. That was a little off topic, but
it's an interesting point, because it does show. I think what this really shows, first of all, is how many great scorers there have been in the NBA for Curry to still be 39, and just it shows how dominant LeBron has been throughout his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
That he stayed healthy enough to get to 38,000, then suppress Kareem, which nobody thought was possible by anyone. I mean, think about the guys that have played after Kareem. It's been Jordan, it's been Kobe, it's been all these other players that people thought were going to be the generational best players. And yet the guy to do it is LeBron, just based off of his career longevity. The fact that he hasn't scored under a double-digit game since like his third year in the league or something crazy like that. There has never been a player like that. And I think that is what's so hard to wrap your head around when you watch him, is you don't understand what you're seeing until you look at these other stats and what these other players did, and then realize, wow, we've never seen, even if you want to say that Jordan is still the best player ever, we've never seen a player like LeBron ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely agreed. In any sport, really.
No. Brady is like the closest, and that's where I think it's interesting that, again, this is sort of off topic, but when it comes to Brady and LeBron, the reason why they are considered the best players ever, maybe they didn't have the skill set of other players. Brady certainly didn't. But when you play long enough and are consistent enough throughout your entire career, you will be considered the greatest because you will have more championships than everyone else, more records than everyone else, and break these records that nobody thought possible. And at that point, then it's hard to argue that you're not the greatest player ever, even again if you weren't considered the best with your skill set.
Agreed. And like, you're right. For a while, it seemed like the Kareem's record was unbreakable. Like it had been a record for 50 or so years, and I mean, we all thought Jordan was going to be the greatest we ever saw, and like we didn't really think anyone could get to his level, and he didn't even break the record. And then, we get LeBron, and LeBron is unquestionably on the same level as Michael Jordan. It's just that he's played, now 5 more years, I believe. 4 or 5 more years now.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a knock on LeBron or Jordan. I'm just saying that's why, he's been able to play for that long, and he's been able to stay healthy for that long, and he's been able to be at the top of his game for that long.
I'm waiting for Jordan to make another documentary stroking his ego at a major point in LeBron's career like he did when he came back from 3-1, though.
Yeah.
That was so strategic when he dropped that documentary. It was like, I'm just reminding you I'm the greatest. I know LeBron just did something, but I'm here.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I didn't like the documentary. I wanted to see like more of like a Bulls emphasis. And it was just like, let's stroke Mike's ego.
Uh-huh.
And like it was a lot of shitting on Jerry Krause, and like this is like after he died. Like I mean like I thought it would have been cool if like he was alive and he would give his perspective, but I didn't like the documentary from like many perspectives.
I mean, I thought it was incredibly entertaining.
It was entertaining, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it also produced by Jordan though?
Yeah, that doesn't rub me the right way.
No, I understand that, but I also think this is something my dad pointed out about the documentary, which I never thought about until he said it. Do you notice throughout the entire documentary, Jordan is smoking a cigar and has whiskey next to him? He literally sat down with the cigar, multiple cigars, I'm sure, and probably a bottle or so of whiskey, and said, I'm going to talk about everything that happened in my career and what happened in this one year particularly. There's never been a documentary like that I can think of, where one guy said, I'm just going to air out every single thing that happened in my career, that happened this time, and how I felt about every single person, and then let other guys sort of give their perspective, even if it was still framed in how they felt about Jordan. I think that's where the documentary became such a big thing. And the fact it was also released during the pandemic when there was no sports on. So you got to relive the magic of watching the Bulls teams make the runs that they did and have the star power they did. And I think that's where it becomes this sort of iconic feature of history that even if it is framed by one person, it still makes it so much more interesting than most other documentaries.
Yeah, I thought it was cool to see like MJ's perspective of everything, and like I think that people lose sight in that. Like he was telling his story about it. Like I know you're saying you wish it was more unbiased, I guess is the right word for it, and looked more into the Bulls as a whole and kind of just presented information. But I feel like the information we got was a lot of it was from Jordan's perspective. I don't know. In an era of sports now where dysfunction like never wins ever, it's cool to see how crazily dysfunctional they were. And yet they had 2 3-peats, like dominated the sport. it's kind of crazy. I don't know. Like, we were literally just talking about the Nets having 3 superstars. Like, if you match them up with the Bulls of Jordan, like, one by one, I'm saying the Nets probably beat them out by a couple because, like, you have Kyrie and Harden, like, and it was, back then it was Ron Harper and a couple white guys too, even. Like, they were just guys that could not be on Kyrie or Harden's level ever. As a team, like, you forget how much Jordan carried that team, really. Like, I know they won a lot after Jordan left, and, like, they won a lot of games. I think they were not the 1 seed. I think they were like the 2 or 3 when Jordan left. The thing is, they were still a talented roster without Jordan, and that's why they won a lot of games. But let's be real, they were never going to compete for a championship without Jordan. Like, Jordan was the engine. Jordan was the train. Like, it's cool to see that, in my opinion. And honestly, I think that he has earned the right to stroke his ego. Like, I can't wait for a LeBron documentary, honestly, sort of similar to The Last Dance, where I kind of want LeBron to just stroke his ego the whole time and, like, tell me how great he was, because he really was. And I want him to give me more insight into how great he was. Like, the documentary only made me realize how great Jordan was. Like, that's all it really did for me.
I don't know if LeBron has an ego for sure. Don't get me wrong. If you're going to be that great and consider yourself the king before you get to the league, you have an ego. I don't think it's the same type of ego. I never got the feeling that LeBron has wanted to be sort of as the focus, even though he knows he's the face of the NBA. It's sort of like a silent ego. He knows he's great. He doesn't have to rub it in. I feel like Jordan always was a very outspoken person when it came to his game. And that sort of, what we saw in the documentary was how he was as a player. And LeBron has had those tendencies as well, but it's always been more from, like, a management style. We always hear about how LeBron sort of makes his teams around him. I don't think Jordan ever did that. I think Jordan was more of a coach type. Yeah. And that's why the documentary works so well, because you saw that coach style in him.
That's so true.
He never would have been a great NBA coach at all. He had too much of an ego for that. He kind of said that himself. But it worked as a player because he could coach the guys the way he wanted. And that's not really LeBron's style. So I don't know if LeBron's documentary will be as entertaining as The Last Dance because of that reason.
Yeah, he does avoid, like, sit-down interviews unless it's, like, his show. So I don't really think he'll do it, but, like, Jordan is, like, a maniac, so, like, it kind of makes sense that, like, he wanted to, like, get a lot of airtime.
Yeah, right. And LeBron, one of the reasons he moved out to LA, too, he said, was because of the career he wants to build after basketball. So I think that it'll be interesting to see what he makes, if he even does make anything about his career, because what Aiden said is correct. Like, the Jordan ego and LeBron ego are two different egos. LeBron, I feel like LeBron's ego is like, he knows he's great, but he doesn't need you to know necessarily, or like, he doesn't need you to praise him or anything. Like, Jordan was like, you are going to know I'm the best, and I'm going to show you, like, every time, and I'm going to rub it in you every time. Like, he got pleasure out of that. That's, one of the main points of the documentary was he loved rubbing it in people, and LeBron is definitely not that, like, 100%. So I think his documentary will be interesting, because I think one is definitely coming. Maybe not produced by LeBron or anything, though.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. I think LeBron, like, doesn't give a fuck because, like, every young player in the league, like, favors Kobe over him for whatever reason. Yeah. And, like, people have, like, disrespected into his face, like, plenty of times, and, like, no one would have the balls to do that to Jordan. Yeah. So it's just, like, a different, like, motivation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely going to be a documentary made about LeBron, and then definitely one about the Golden State Warriors.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested more in the Warriors one, because as much as they have been able to win without too much drama, there certainly were guys that caused issues. Specifically, Draymond Green's probably the biggest example of their most outspoken personality, the guy that caused a lot of issues that the Warriors were able to keep under wraps and not make it too much of a problem that affected their winning. And I'm interested to see how they did that, what style they went with. And because it could be a formula for other teams to try to copy, although I don't think it will be nearly successful as what the Warriors were able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Do you guys have anything else?
Baseball season's right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers.
Oh, yeah,
reported,
Judge
so.
just got signed for 9 years, $360.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can get more into it next episode, but that's something to be on the lookout for is spring training games coming up soon.
Yeah, I'm excited for some of these games, some guys in new places. I did see, quickly, before we wrap up, that DeGrom just got shut down again almost immediately.
Yep.
On, like, the first day. Pitched 45 minutes and then felt something. I think it was like his left side and just shut down again. So I think the Rangers totally flopped on this one, which doesn't shock me because the Rangers have been a dysfunctional organization ever since they lost Game 7 of the 2011 World Series and haven't really been close to coming back anywhere close to that success since. So they've been doing their best to sign high-profile guys, but they're either not the type of player they need, or they're just aging stars that they want to bring in as almost attractions rather than guys that will help them win. So, something to look out for, I guess. It's disappointing that DeGrom's career is ending like this, but he's just been injury-prone for so long that it's not shocking at all. Yeah,
and quickly again, like, this is something I said to Jack when the Rangers signed him. I said that was bad for... Obviously, we're Phillies fans. I said that was bad for the Phillies because I wanted DeGrom on the Mets taking up one of their rotation spots because I knew, we all know that this is kind of coming with him. You know, he pitches for a good stretch and then an injury kind of shuts it down. He runs into a wall.
So I think that'll do it for this week. We'll see you next week, Saturday, 2 p.m. You guys know the drill. All right. And DM us with topics if you guys want us to talk about anything. We haven't gotten one in a while. All right. See you next time.